Brendan Ryan here from Later Life Advice. Now, the government tests for people entering into residential aged care can mean the difference between paying an extra $46,000 in fees or paying no fees. So it's very important to have some sense of how the government means testing works. We put together this calculator that does some things in a very efficient and visual way. Now, just as a bit of background, this aged care calculator is based on the Aged Care Act. And if you go to the Act, if you can find the section about working out daily means test, it's enormously complicated. And not only do you have to work out the system of how this test works, but then you have to match it up to all the thresholds. Now, this is all public information and there's links on this website on how to find it. But what we've done is to put this all together in a visual way. And what is very unusual about this test is that depending on your assessable assets or income, the test kind of kicks in at a different sort of percentage rate to generate an amount that contributes to a test. You have a contribution based on your assets and a contribution based on income. Then it's put together to see if it's over a certain threshold, which determines then what you pay. And because of the nature of this test being based on assets and income, you rarely see, well, you can't see a very specific test to say, well, mum's got assets of X that's under the threshold, so she shouldn't have to or need to contribute or whatever. Because it's combined, this is quite a difficult kind of outcome to articulate through a simple calculator. So if you'll note on the calculator, you can see as you adjust assets, here you've got large sections where your assets make no difference to the test, and then that kicks in at a certain percentage. So it's really complicated. That's why to get your assessment for these fees, you actually have to fill in forms and send them to the government and they send it back. So here is how the test works. It's set up for a single person based on current thresholds, and the outcomes can vary widely. So for example, if you can see here where the thresholds are, where people pay no contribution at all to the cost of care. There is a point here where there are no lump sums paid by the individual, and the government comes in and they share the cost. And then when it starts to kick in, where the hotel and contribution amount kicks in, and the non-clinical care contribution. Sorry, this is a bit of a mouthful. And then you can work out where it gets to the point where your assets are high enough that you're going to be paying the maximum, and that might lead you to not fill in any paperwork at all. So this slider works really well for putting in assessable assets and assessable income. However, to get to that position of understanding what assessable asset and income position need to be put into the calculator, we're going to use the My Aged Care Fee Estimator. Right. So looking at the estimator, which you can easily find by going to My Aged Care and just going to the bottom of the page and clicking on Aged Care Home Fee Estimator, there's a couple of things I'd like to highlight that are important. What's not important are the video and written guides. They really give very little information. In fact, the Aged Care Home Fee Estimator uses an example of a 75-year-old full pensioner who rents, doesn't own a home obviously, is on the maximum pension, has $25 in other income and $10,000 in other assets. So he essentially has no significant assets to test. So the application or the mechanics of the Aged Care Home Fee Estimator are not relevant at all in that situation. There's also a Aged Care Home and Income Asset Checklist, which does some things well, but where it falls down is things like superannuation income. It directs you to the guide to Social Security law. And the reason for that is superannuation is complex. There have been rule changes over years. People are, situations are grandfathered. So it's inordinately complicated to work out exactly how superannuation is assessed in a simple way. So we're in the Aged Care Home Fee Estimator, and we're going to start the process of estimating aged care home fees. And what I want to highlight is, as we go through the different questions, what asset and income testing propositions they refer to. So the first thing we're going to see is this your first entry into permanent residential aged care? The reason this is being asked is there's currently, you could potentially be under 3 pricing models. There's the pricing model that is just finished, that new entrants will not have access to. There is a pricing model for people that are that have had a home care package after a certain date, so they get some kind of hybrid model. And then there's a sort of November 1 model. So as you could appreciate, for an aged care home, there's a lot of complexity in understanding the pricing models that the different residents are subject to. So we're going to say in this example that it is the first entry into residential aged care, and that the client was not receiving a home care package. So they're not going to be on the hybrid model because they had a home care package on the 12th of September 2024. We're focusing on the new pricing model. So I'm going to say no to that. And we're going for the 1 November 2025 fee arrangements. The questions here are asking if the resident has a partner. The reason for that would be assets are going to be split. Couples' assets are split equally, and in reference to deeming rates, and the potential for a partner to still reside in the person's home, and that home has a different assets test treatment as well. So look, this is inordinate complexity for high stress situation, but what we're just trying to do is to demonstrate some of the things that are relevant in this process. So for this example, we're going to say no partner, but this person in this example owns a home, and we're going to say that there is no one residing in the home. And what this question refers to is that the home can be excluded from the assets test if there's a partner living in the property, or a carer or close relative that fits into a certain definition, of which we've got links to on the website for you to find out. In this case, I'm going to say no. This person, in this example, we're going to be looking at someone with $300,000 in assets for the sake of this example, and a home worth $1.3 million. So someone with $300,000 in financial assets, we're just going to assume cash in the bank, they'll be getting close to $30,000 in age pension income, right? That's put in here. The 300,000, the income from the 300,000 doesn't need to be put in because it's going to be deemed. And in this case, it's going to be deemed based on the rules for a single person. Just to give you an example of the complexity, we're going to say the market value of the home is $1.3 million, $300,000 in financial assets. We're going to say 0 for superannuation, just to keep this example straightforward, and no debt. So this is the sort of first situation here where the assessable assets and income number might not be directly what you think. So you can see in the example that the financial assets are 300,000, no debt, home value of 1.3 million, $30,000 in pension. What this actually results in is an income estimate of 36,966. So it's a calculated number, on top of the actual age pension income. The resident also has a deemed income. So that 36,966, I'm going to put straight in here for assessable income. Right, we're going to go back to the home care estimator. Now the asset estimate is not just the $300,000 for the financial assets, but because there's no one living in the home, 210,555.20 is added to that to be an assessable asset. You can see the complexity of the calculation. So we're going to put here 510,555.20 in the assessable assets in the calculator. So if we click through to the aged care home fee estimator, what their estimate says is that this is a basic daily fee of $65.55, which we're going to talk about subsequent to this. But this is the important bit: hotelling contribution of $22.15 and $3.02 non-clinical care contribution. So you can see how that works. Slightly messy formatting on my calculator, but the assets test has been assessed. The amounts between about 63,000, 211,000 have been assessed at 17.5% and reduced to a daily rate. And then other assets in this band here, giving this contribution to the test. And this is a very, very, I've never seen anything like it in any other parts of, government means testing legislation. So you've got this contribution amount here to the test, And the fact that it's not just the age pension income, but there's a bit of deemed income, puts the resident slightly over this income test. Only $3.03 contributes, which means they've got this means tested fee impact. And what it also means, because they're through this threshold, they'll have to pay the refundable accommodation deposit or pay by a daily accommodation payment. So that is an extra component of the fees that's not referred to here that clearly, but it does give you the opportunity, to put in your room cost here or to look up provider specifically. But I guess what we're really interested in here is that there's this for around $46,000 in fees, and the derivation of it is very unclear, and the impact of other situations like having a spouse or a carer remaining in the home, in terms of exempting that from the test, and understanding the impact of deeming.